Just this week, the President of the United States signed an executive order that made it clear that any country that supply oil to Cuba would be tariff. Now, I'm not sure if you have been following the conditions in Cuba, but up to 20 hours a day, they experience a blackout because the whole matter of their electrical grid is in a bad state, and the fact that their oil has been cut off from Venezuela because of the ousting of Nicolas Maduro has made their situation worse. And Mexico, who used to send oil to Cuba, and Mexico said that they were doing this for humanitarian reasons because the Cuban people were suffering. And you can just imagine that what's going to happen now. Hospitals will be without electricity, schools will be without electricity, critical services will be suffering, and as basic thing as food that the government supply to its people, it takes electricity and fuel to move that food around the country. So you can just imagine the humanitarian crisis that is about to happen to our closest neighbor, just 90 miles away from us in Jamaica. But as it unfolds, I am helplessly brought back to what if? What if in 1980 Michael Manley had won that election? It meant that it would have meant that Jamaica would have been aligned with democratic socialism, more on the communist side of life than what we currently have. It would be more like Cuba, or probably a hybrid, something between what we have and what Cuba is. But that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is that the United States was not happy with our relationship with Cuba, and they didn't like our political posture. And as a result of that, the CIA was used to destabilize Jamaica. Now just imagine if even after that destabilization, that Michael Manley had won that election, we would have become like a pariah as far as the United States is concerned. And we would have been aligned with Cuba, who up to this day, despite their many areas in which they have been successful, they still have not accomplished economic independence. And that is the key. Because if they had established economic independence, it would be more difficult for the United States to sabotage them. But right now, the US has its hands firmly around the neck of the Cuban economy. And if we know anything about the United States under Donald Trump, I don't think that they're gonna take their hands off the neck of Cuba until they get what they want. And according to Marco Rubio, it sounds as if they want a regime change. In other words, the United States want to install a leader in Cuba that is more aligned with America. So just imagine where we would have been as Jamaica at this point. Because we still would be struggling. For those who believe that it would have been a simple thing as accomplishing the goals that Michael Manley had laid out, a self-reliance. If they think that it would have been that easy, then now you can look and see that it would not have been. You cannot develop economic independence in a vacuum. You have to be aligned to powers that can help in that way. We are sitting in the backyard of the United States. And if they sneeze, we catch a cold. So I'm not sure how we would have developed economic independence in that context. Probably I'm not smart enough to figure that out. But if you're gonna develop, isolation is not a recommendation. Countries that isolate do not develop. And you can look around the world. Once you isolate a country, you basically strangle it, because the way trade and all those things are organized and their necessity for the growth of a particular country, you have to be involved in that type of trade and interaction with the rest of the world. And the more friends you have in doing that, is the better it is for you. So I would want to submit today that in 1980, Jamaica dodged a bullet. And I will hasten to say that on September 3rd, we dodged a bullet. Because if you listen to the rhetoric coming from the other side, they give you the impression that if they were in power, they would have directly denounced the United States for what happened in Venezuela. And I see countries that are bigger than us, has more autonomy than us, who are walking the tightrope of geopolitical diplomacy. And they are making sure that their responses are in line with the interests of their country. And that is what Dr. Andrew Holness is saying. That we have to be practical and understand the world that we live in. You can't be tone deaf. When you feed yourself, you can have a lot of chat. But when you eat out another man's pot, you can't even complain. Say you have too much salt, or you don't have none. I heard the Prime Minister talk about the issue of economic independence. And I want to play that for you to listen. And I will comment after.
In today's world. And we have to establish that clearly. I hear the commentators, many of them seem to be stuck in an era where they believe the world owes them something. You have to be able to find your way in the world. You have to be able to find the opportunities, mitigate the threats. There is a generation that still thinks about political independence. What I'm struggling for is Jamaica's economic independence. You can talk all you want about your political independence. At some point, you have to be able to back it up with your economic independence. So, Professor Young, thank you for that, again, well-written treatise.
The world does not owe us anything. We have to find our own way. There is a residue of handout mentality that's a carryover from the 1970s. There are some Jamaicans who believe that government exists to hand out, to dole out scarce benefits and political spoils. That's what they think the government exists for, because they are tied to this democratic socialism ideology. Now that might work for some countries in other parts of the world, but it's not going to work in the region that we live, not when you're in the backyard of the United States. So this mentality is of handing out. It's not going to work. And the Prime Minister is correct. The world doesn't owe us anything. And I heard the opposition leader in Parliament this year saying something along those same lines, as if somehow the international community responses and how they help and all of that. The way he was framing it, it was as if we should be expecting something that we're not entitled to. And the Prime Minister responded at that time in the Parliament by saying that he doesn't operate from the perspective that the world owes anything. We have to find our own way. And this is the same sentiment he's echoing here. And I'm happy to hear the Prime Minister continue with that theme. That there is that there's nothing that we should be expecting from anybody. We're not entitled to anything. We have to find our own way. Hence the saying, God help those who help themselves. And so on September 3rd, I think we also dodge a bullet. Because if the People's National Party had won that election, our government would be a government of ambivalence. They wouldn't have a single strong, strident, practical view on global politics. And they would have said something that would have shot us in the foot and put the United States on our back. The United States has the power to bring Jamaica to its knees. And as Michael Manley said, we should be walking through the world on our knees, but on our feet. That is what he didn't want to do that. And I agree with him. I agree with him. I agree with that kind of rhetoric. We will not walk through the world on our knees, but on our feet. It sounds good. Sounds damn good. But how do you get there? How do you get there? That is the problem. The goal is the same, but the approach is different. I like the approach of Dr. Holmes. It's practical. It is showing that he has a good grasp of the world. He's not tone deaf. He understands the global politics that is happening, and he is positioning Jamaica to make the best of the power dynamics of geopolitics. And that's a better approach, because no country can develop in a vacuum. You need other countries. And it is better to be aligned to most of the world than to a little bit that can't help you. Because even today, Cuba, which is our closest neighbor, still has not achieved economic independence. And the answer is clear as to why. The ideology does not fit into this world that would bring them to that point. And they are up against the biggest force in the world, the United States. So Jamaica, let's press on. Let's keep our focus, and let's build Jamaica up so that we do not have to depend on the rest of the world or even the United States forever. But at some point, we will be able to withstand the shocks and all the topsy-turvy nature of this world. God will continue to bless Jamaica and bless our Prime Minister, our people, and our government. Walk good.